Dear students, I am Dr. Minky, Associate Professor, Chaudhary Devilal College of Pharmacy, Jagatri. Today's topic of discussion is classification of crude drugs. Now, what are crude drugs? As I told you earlier about crude drugs are simple drugs. They are the naturally occurring substances. Naturally occurring means these are obtained from plants, animals, minerals, marine sources, or from microorganisms. Crude drugs are used directly or indirectly in its raw form for its medicinal use. Raw form means it can be used as it is present in nature without any further processing except drying and side reduction. Now, as you know, crude drugs are divided into two groups, organized and unorganized crude drugs. Organized drugs comprises those crude drugs material which represent a part of the plant and therefore made up of cells which can be used directly. Example, leaves, fruits, roots, etc. Organized crude drugs have proper cellular structure. Every part of the plant falls into the category of organized drug. Okay. Now, what are unorganized drugs? Unorganized crude drugs are diverse group of solid and liquid material which do not consist of parts of plant or animals but are obtained from them by a variety of extraction procedure. Example, latex, juice, gums, resins, oils, etc. Unorganized crude drugs lack morphological and anatomical organization, means they do not composed of cells and usually derived from the part of the plant or animals. Now coming to our main topic, how crude drugs can be classified or what are the different methods of classification of crude drug. Because of their wide distribution, the arrangement of classification in a definite sequence is necessary to understand easily. The various systems of classification of crude drugs are alphabetical classification, morphological classification, taxonomical classification, pharmacological classification, chemical classification, and chemotaxonomical classification. Although each system of classification has its own merits and demerits, but for the purpose of study, the crude drugs are classified in these systems. So our first system of classification is alphabetical classification. In this method, the crude drugs are arranged according to the alphabetical order from their Latin and English names. Some of the pharmacopoeias and reference books which classify crude drugs according to this system are Indian Pharmacopoeia, British Pharmacopoeia Codex, United States Pharmacopoeia, and European Pharmacopoeia. These are the reference books which follows this type of classification, which adopted this system of classification. So here we take an example. Our first example is acacia. So all the crude drugs which start from alphabet A are put together like acacia, agar, etc. Similarly, all the crude drugs which starts from alphabet B are put together like beeswax, benzoin, and so on. After that, drug uh, starts from C, D, E, and so on. It will go on like this. Now, all the system of classification have some merits and demerits. The merits of alphabetical classification are this system is easy and quick to use. No entries appears repetitively, thus avoiding confusion. Location tracing and adding drugs entries can be done easily. Okay, it is simple method and no technical person is required for its handling. In this system, location, tracing and addition of drug is easy. Then the merits of alphabetical classification are: original source of drug is not clear by this classification. Scientific nature of drug cannot be identified, that whether the drug is organized or unorganized. The alphabetical classification system of drug lacks relationship with the previous and successive drug entries. Original source is not clear means this system does not help in distinguishing the drug from plant, animal and mineral source. Then next, no indication of interrelationship among drugs. Then coming to the next system of classification, that is morphological classification. Here the crude drugs are arranged according to the part of the plant or animal represented into organized drugs and unorganized drugs. The crude drugs are classified according to the morphological characters like leaves, bark, seeds, fruit, roots, flowers, etc. So these are the examples of morphological classification of organized drugs. According to morphological classification, organized drugs are further classified as the part of the plant like leaves, roots, flowers, bark, etc. The medicinal plants whose fruits are used for medicinal purpose are grouped together. Example: cardamom, capsicum, fennel, coriander, etc. Um, the plants whose bark part is used as medicine are put together, for example cinnamon, cinchona, etc. Likewise for rhizome, flower, fruits, leaves, seeds and so on. These are the examples of morphological system of classification of unorganized drug. First example is dried juice. All the medicinal plants whose dried juice is used for medicinal purpose, they are put together in the category of dried juice. Its example is aloe. Other example is fixed oil. Medicinal plants from which fixed oil is obtained and used as a drug. These plants are grouped into the category of fixed oil, and some for other unorganized drugs are dried latex, gums, waxes, resins, and volatile oils. So here are some merits and demerits of morphological classification. Merits are: identification and detection of adulteration using this system is not difficult. Practical study by this classification system is more convenient in cases where chemical nature of the drug is unknown. Okay, this system of classification is more convenient for practical study, especially when the chemical nature of the drug is not clearly understood. This type of classification is very useful in identifying the adulterants used, and organized and unorganized drugs can be differentiated. Demerits are: the chemical constituents have no correlation with the therapeutic action. Repetition of the drugs or plants may appear. It does not give any idea about the chemical constituent and uses of the plant. Processing of the drugs like collection, drying and preparation for market may change their original characters, making recognition quite difficult. Okay. Now we will talk about the next system of classification, that is taxonomical classification. It is also known as biological classification. This system of classification is purely botanical. The drugs are classified according to the plants or animals from which they are obtained in phyla, orders, families, genera, species, subspecies, etc. For plant drugs, such classification is called botanical classification, while in case of animals, it is called as zoological classification. This classification is based on phylogenetical similarity of plant, means plants are grouped according to their evolutionary relationship. Evolutionary relationship means what is the origin of that plant, from which common ancestor that plant evolved. So according to taxonomical classification, the crude drugs are arranged into division, class, order, family, genus, species, etc. Here we are taking an example of licorice. Biological source of licorice is Glycyrrhiza glabra. So the phylum of licorice is Spermatophyta, division is Angiospermae, class is Dicotyledons, order is Rosales, family is Leguminosae, subfamily Papilionaceae, genus Glycyrrhiza, and species is glabra, means Glycyrrhiza glabra. Okay. This is another example of taxonomical classification. Now, merits of taxonomical classification. In this method, there is no repetition and it is devoid of ambiguity. Okay, means evolutionary developments are understood under taxonomical classification, able to establish natural relationship or phylogeny among plants and animals arranged in precise, well-mannered pattern. Okay, there are some demerits of this classification are it fails to recognize the organized and unorganized forms of crude drug. Initially, this classification appears interesting, but many drugs do not comprise entire plant which denote plant parts processed systematically. Chemical nature of active constituent and therapeutic significance of crude drug are not included. Means this system is criticized for its failure to recognize the organized and unorganized nature of drugs. As the whole plant is not used as a drug, so this system has no significant importance for identification. Uh, in taxonomical classification, technical person is required for their classification. Location tracing of drug is not easy in this system. Then next system of classification is chemical classification. Here the crude drugs are divided into different groups according to the chemical nature of the most important chemical constituent present in the drug. Okay. It is a preferred method of classification since therapeutic and pharmacological significance is based on the chemical composition of the crude drug. Students, as I told you earlier, there are some chemical constituents present in the plants which are responsible for the therapeutic and pharmacological action of the plants. The chemical constituents are also known as secondary metabolites or active chemical constituent of that drug. Those chemical constituents which are responsible for the pharmacological action of the plant drugs are alkaloids, flavonoids, tannins, glycosides, volatile oils, lipids, etc. Okay. If we classify crude drugs into different groups according to the chemical nature of the main chemical constituent, means the most important chemical constituent is from which category. According to that, crude drugs are classified, that is known as chemical classification of crude drug. Okay, examples are given here. All crude drugs with alkaloid as the main chemical constituents are grouped together under the category of alkaloids. Example, Nux vomica, Datura, Cinchona, Vasaca, etc. All these drugs are alkaloidal drugs. Next example is all crude drugs with volatile oil as the main chemical constituents are grouped together under the category of volatile oils. Example, clove, eucalyptus, cinnamon, etc. These all drugs are known as volatile oil containing drugs. Other examples are of tannins, carbohydrates, lipids, glycosides, vitamins, etc. Now, merits and demerits of chemical classification. Phytochemical studies are well performed through this system. Chemical constituents in this classification are known. Medicinal uses are also known. Okay, and various disadvantages of this classification are drugs of different origin are grouped together under similar chemical titles. This type of classification makes no proper placement of drugs containing two different types of chemicals. Okay, I've shown example here. Means some drugs contains more than one chemical constituent in it, so it becomes difficult to place that drug, means in which category it should be placed. For example, cinchona. Cinchona is an antimalarial drug which contains both alkaloids and glycosides in it. So in this classification, it becomes difficult that in which category cinchona should be placed. Other example is nutmeg. In Hindi, it is known as jaffle. It contains both volatile oil and fixed oil in it, and it is difficult to categorize them because volatile oil and fixed oil both are of equal importance. Then another system of classification is pharmacological classification. This is also known as therapeutic classification. Okay. In this type of classification, the crude drugs are grouped together according to the pharmacological action of the chief constituent or their therapeutic uses. Okay, so here the crude drugs are classified according to the pharmacological action of their active constituents, regardless of its morphology, taxonomical status, or chemical relationship. The drugs are grouped together provided they exhibit similar pharmacological action. Then these are some example of this classification. Like all crude drugs acts on GIT are grouped together. All crude drugs which are used in respiratory disorders are grouped together. Means, for example, licorice, Vasaca, Apicac have expectorant property. They are put together under the category of expectorant. Okay. These are the example of drugs acting on autonomous system, CNS, antispasmodics, anti-cancer and astringents, etc. Then merits and demerits of pharmacological system of classification. So merits are the special advantage is that if even chemical constituent of the drug are not known, they can be classified properly on the basis of therapeutic or pharmacological uses. Means it is useful in studying the therapeutic uses of the drug. Such type of classification forms the basis for the science of pharmacology. This system suggests substitute of drugs. Demerits. Drug with different actions on the body get classified into many groups, thus creating confusion. Okay, means many crude drugs shows more than one pharmacological action. We put that crude drug in more than one category. We will take example of cinchona here. Cinchona is antimalarial drug due to its chemical constituent quinine, and cinchona has antiarrhythmic property also due to presence of another chemical constituents which is quinidine. So cinchona is used as both antimalarial and arrhythmic drug. Okay. Now, next system of classification is chemotaxonomical classification. The expanding knowledge of phytochemical screening has revealed the existence of close relationship between constituent of the plants and their taxonomical status. The characters are more often studied in chemotaxonomy are secondary metabolites of pharmaceutical importance such as alkaloids, glycosides, flavonoids, etc. In this system of classification, the equal importance is given for taxonomical status and chemical classification. Means uh, chemotaxonomical classification is chemistry correlated to taxonomy. This classification is based on the chemical similarity of a taxon, means it is based on the existence of relationship between chemical constituents in various plants. Here the word chemotaxonomy is made up of two words. First is chemo, means chemical, and second word is taxonomical, which is derived from the word taxonomy. Collectively it is known as chemotaxonomy. I told you earlier about taxonomical classification. In simple words, in taxonomical classification is done according to its chemical similarity. For example, for tropane alkaloids, which is a chemical. So there are many plants whose family is Solanaceae. Okay, these plants belongs to Solanaceae family. The plants which belongs to Solanaceae family are Datura, Belladonna, Hyoscyamus, Coca. All these plants come under the Solanaceae family, and these all plants contains similar chemical constituent, that is tropane alkaloids. So all these plants are grouped together in one group, that is tropane alkaloids. Okay. Other examples are also given here. Then merits and demerits. It is the latest system of classification and provides a better understanding of the relationship between chemical constituent, their biosynthesis and possible action. Okay, it is very complicated process to recognize the chemicals present in the plant, so it can be a time consuming process. Okay. That's it. This is all about the classification of crude drug. Thank you. Have a nice day.